All right, so I think everybody here is in the Google Classroom now. So I'll skip this slide. All right, so today's topic is Google Forms. Oh, yes.
Hello, Mr. McCartney.
Class.
Yeah. Not at all. Oh, yeah, why not? Let's share it earlier. Okay, so let's cut right to our guest who has a couple of forms. Instead of going through some stuff first, let's go ahead and see some different ways in which forms can be used, and we can cut back to that. So the first one was, well, can you explain what this is,
Yeah.
Kevin?
First time I use form each year is back to school, or what do we call it, open house. In the fourth grade classroom, I think you guys have like 2 or 3 desktops set up. So I would have them all open to this form and let them type into it. If you were really good, you could probably have the Spanish translation next to it. It's a great way to collect information and then have it all in one spreadsheet. If you're in a co-taught room, now you and your co-teacher both have access to that information. It's not just one piece of paper that the parents are all waiting in line to fill out. It can go home on a link or a QR code to parents that didn't make it to open house. And then the information is easy to share, because if a parent, homeroom parent, just wants to know what the allergies are for birthday things, you can send those 2 columns home rather than Xeroxing the paper form and then crossing stuff out. Saying to them, like, I don't trust you with this information. They just would never know that there was any other information there. Also great for sorting, but for transportation, for sub lists and things like that. Who are your bus riders, who are your walkers, YMCA.
Cool. And I just want to throw in one thing, which is that a lot of the Google Docs are built so that they cannot be shared outside of the county for security. But Forms has the option of making it available to people outside, which is why he can share it with the parents. But that's an option. You have to actually choose that. All right. So I really like this one. So we'll look at this one next.
So this is a review station for Math Workshop. So kid logs on, you get math teacher. So Nick Heron, type the student types the name. Hit continue, they get a PEMDAS problem. 12 divided by 3 plus 9 times 2 is 22. So, but we don't want to click that. We want to get this wrong. Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to intentionally get this wrong then, so you can see what happens.
So the next place you're taken to is a YouTube video explaining PEMDAS strategies. If you had gotten that question right, you would have skipped over this and got the harder TEI style questions. So they watch the video, answer 3 questions that get harder as they go on, and then if they get those all wrong, or 2 out of 3 wrong, they will still advance to the screen, but I would have up the spreadsheet so that I would see their submissions come in and be like, okay, it's 4 wrong in a row. They probably need some more direct. You know, the best is when they get the first one wrong, watch the video, go, oh, yeah, and then get the next 3 right. And then kids who got that first one wrong might have more trouble with these fill in the blanks, TEI type questions.
And then if you were to put the right answers in here, then you get to.
And then at the end, there's a fast finisher games for them to play.
Really cool. It supports different paces for different students. There's something for kids to do if they get through really quickly that's appropriate to them.
Sorry, do you post this on your classroom? There's a link to it?
Yeah, so I have a thing called Portal that just is, it could be whatever classroom website, whatever you want to use to organize your things. And this is how it's supposed to be.
Oh.
Or use like a Google shortener to give them a smaller website than the actual thing.
And Classroom is obviously great too.
Yeah,
That
actually,
works.
yeah, that's
All of them work well.
now I would put this on Classroom because
And let's see. I liked the small groups notes rubric. That's what I called it anyway.
Yeah, so this is how I would use this for me. So I hate keeping my notes on paper because I lose them, or they just become sticky notes all in a folder that I never go back to. So here, if you click standards, this is what we're reviewing for science and math. It has all the mathematical science standards and indicators.
So you just copied and pasted those into the drop down?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. In forms, you can select a list and then hit paste in the first thing and it'll drop it all. Make lots of options for you.
Okay, so I'm going to take one.
Yep, and then this one costs from last year, so pick a kid from the group. At the end of the group, where do I think he is? With the other kid.
So you have some anecdotal notes here too that will also go in your spreadsheet. Okay, and then you can move on to another student.
And this would probably be more complex at the beginning of the year, but this is the one I just reviewed for the SOL, like the last week before the site, so it was pretty standard. I wanted to just know where they were. And then at the end, there was hours, minutes, and seconds because there was concerns that some groups wouldn't be getting that with enough. So this was a good way for me to document that. Now I am meeting with everybody during the picture.
So that all goes into the spreadsheet. You can review that whenever you want. You don't have to organize it yourself. And if you create this form once, you can reuse it, copy it, duplicate it all over the course of the year. Cool.
Questions?
Yes. Any questions?
And this is probably my favorite form I've ever made. It's just a prompting guide. There's never any input, really. And so SOL prompts, you can go between fiction, nonfiction, and word analysis.
Is that good?
So yeah, nonfiction. And then you look at the standards. You pick a standard, so you're writing a guided reading plan, you want to do a nonfiction, identify the main ideas. And then there are all the SOL style stems.
Now I forget, is this for you as a teacher?
Yeah.
Okay,
this
so
is for the fifth grade team.
So this is for you to be able to have a quick reference to get to
Yeah.
a STEM to use for a question, for example.
Yeah, I pull it up when I'm writing guided reading plans. It would also be good if you were needed on the fly. You could have it open on your phone. I just think it shows how you can jump around the forms and not use them just as input devices.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanted to write a fun, like the kids really like those stories where it's like,
Choose your
I
own
don't know what
adventure.
they're called.
Oh.
Yeah, choose your own adventures. You could write a choose your own adventure story using like your kid's name from this, and then they could just hop on and read it.
So, I mean, you can see that these things are kind of like act like websites, except that you don't need to do any design. They pretty much write themselves. They're very simple, but there's the dynamic nature of them. You can branch from one, question. The response influences what questions or content the student is going to see in the future. So there's a lot of power in a very kind of like small, simple package. All right. Well, thank you for sticking around and enjoy the lacrosse. All right. So I'm going to jump back because I did want to go over a couple of things. So, so it's good at collecting information from anyone. It's good at providing a quick automatic charts of the data. So by default, the Google Forms, as they are now, and they're constantly updating things at Google, so it gets better all the time. Sometimes you're just caught off guard by it because it's a little bit different. But so the automatic charts, basically, if you ask any questions, you'll automatically be able to pull up like a pie charts or bar charts, graphs, maybe percentages if they're multiple choice questions that you can throw up on your screen and quickly say, okay, so this is what the class thought about this. Look at this, it's visual. What do you think of this? And discuss something. So that's pretty cool. Or if it's like actual student data, in terms of how well they're doing on a little quiz you made, you can get that pretty quickly and eyeball it. The results also go into a Google spreadsheet, which was like that great thing about Kevin's forms, because he doesn't have to worry about losing them or organizing them. It's all in a spreadsheet. He can share instantly with his partner or team. You can create branching, answer-dependent forms, reviews, or even stories. So you kind of covered that too, the choose your own adventure, these branching forms. Creating a quick performance rubric for use by teacher. We kind of covered that in terms of the small group thing where he's able to use a simple rubric, but I'll show you a different way to use that. Quizzes with immediate feedback. Okay, so once again, you can give a quiz to your class and get that instant feedback to address things formatively very quickly. And you can discuss class sentiment and encourage total participation, by which I mean that there's often like the 3 or 4 kids who are going to raise their hand a lot and contribute things, but it's really hard to quickly get input from everybody. And this is a great way because there's no I don't know, they don't have to be shy about it. They'll just write something in, and then all of those answers or responses, maybe they're like actual narrative responses or ideas or words, will appear on the board, and you can discuss that general class sentiment or general ideas that people are coming up with. So that's pretty cool. All right, so a sample form. I'm going to lead you through creating a form. Let's go to drive.google.com. And I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, you guys have created a form before in Google? No? Good. Okay, great. And Sean has. So Drive is basically, where all of your files are stored and where you would go to create a new file. So I'll bring this up on mine in a second, but please click on the New or Create red button on the left. And this is one of those cases where like different versions of Drive will have different names on the button, but it's a big red button. In the drop-down, choose More and then Forms, which I think is weird because Forms should be right there because it's so useful. You shouldn't have to say More. And the form will open. Immediately give it a title in the left top corner. Now, this is what you really want to do with all your Google Docs, because if you don't give something a title, it becomes untitled and it gets lost in your Drive. So you're going to title this. If you have an idea for a form you'd like to create, go ahead and title it that. If you want to, just say Google Workshop Form. And I'm going to do the same. More Google Forms. And the first thing I'm going to do is call it Google Workshop.
You just said it like click in the left corner though, automatically.
Okay.
All right, so is everyone here? Okay, so it's really kind of very aesthetically more pleasing than it used to be. It's pretty nice. So you have your title up here, which is Google Workshop Form. Below that, if you click where it says form description, you can write some description of the form or like maybe some instructions on how it's to be filled out. So I'll just write in instructions here. Blah. And then below that, you just kind of get by default one question. Where it says untitled question, if you click there, that will be the place where you actually write the question. Now, I might say, well, what is a question that you might ask? Yeah.
Oh.
Or anybody.
I'll be really funny.
I'm doing an open house one.
Okay. So what's a good question?
Probably first question I would probably ask is what is the name of your child?
Okay. Name of your child. Okay. Now, I could give an option 1, like I could list options of names, but that's not going to work here very well. So if I go over to the right here, I have the option to change the type of question, and I probably want to go with a short answer. So a short answer is going to be a small text box that's about the size of a person's name or a few words, and that gives the person a chance to respond. Let's go ahead and create one more question. So click on the plus button over at the right. And let's say we have some other question types.
Actually, like probably the question that I will often use for like pre-test, post-test stuff is the Likert scaling. I know this was the linear.
Yeah, okay. So choose the linear
So
scale
linear
here.
Scale of like what's like 1 to 5.
Yeah.
Can you change that scaling?
Well, so I clicked on the linear scale, and I can change it for up to 10. And I get to set a label for the minimum, which is dislike, I don't know, whatever, and love it. Okay, so I've basically made a Likert scale with 10 options from dislike to love it. And that was pretty simple. And then I get in my spreadsheet those numbers, and I can average them if I wanted to, or look at the individual kids. All right. This is pretty handy down here. It's called duplicate. So if I want to reuse the same stem over and over again, that's what I'd always do, to duplicate it and use it again. Down here is something pretty important as well. It's whether the question is required or not. If you move the slider over, there's an asterisk next to the question, and they will have to go back and complete it before they can submit or move on to the next section. You want to be careful that you don't overuse that, because sometimes there are questions that like a kid can't answer, and then they'll be like, what am I supposed to do? Or even a parent, if they're at home, that might not apply to them. So if it's something that applies to everyone and that they really need to answer, you want to do required. Okay. So the linear scale is a great one to look at. Let's see what other types of questions there are in there. So short answer, paragraph. I mean, you can kind of imagine this is a bigger box where you can write a narrative in there. Multiple choice, pretty straightforward. Check boxes are like multiple choice, except they allow you to do multiple select, which is part of our new TEI questions. They allow you to check multiple boxes. Drop down is what you saw with Kevin's form. Okay, so you can, as he said, paste in a list of things and make it kind of easy to construct a drop down with a lot of different choices. This is the one that I kind of wanted to share because sometimes it can be quite useful. It's called a multiple choice grid. And I'm going to show you kind of an extreme example of how it might be useful. So this was, where is it? Oh my gosh, I hope I saved it in here. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to find. Oh, yeah, it's in here somewhere. Okay, so in middle school, we had a writing rubric which was ridiculously 24 points that we had to evaluate for each piece of writing. So if you thought about it, like if you made a rubric for yourself, which is really handy because you just go down and check things off. It works really great on the iPad, by the way. Check things off, then it gets sent into a spreadsheet, which you can then access later. You can sort the students who did poorly on leads, for example, or on, specific word choice, make groups for those students on punctuation or whatever. But the thing is, like, if I tried to make a question for each of these topics, it would be really, really long. So the grid allows me to create a bunch of rows with different topics on them. And it allows me to create a few columns that have different values to them. So my columns have values 1, 0, and unobserved. And my rows have all my different writing rubric items in there. And so basically, I'm able to see everything on one page and go through it really quickly. 24 is really extreme, but you might have a case where there's like a 6 traits of writing or something like that, where it makes it really handy to arrange it that way. So for that one, I would choose the multiple choice grid. I decide how many rows I want to have. And again, I can paste a whole bunch of things as a list into there. Lead, figurative language, and go down that way. And then I decide what are the the values that I want to have as a possibility for each of them. And so in my case, I chose 1, 0, or nothing. And I chose them that way because I wanted to be able to add them up. And you can't add up words, right? Or average. But in any case, you can kind of see how multiple choice grid can be useful if you have specific types of information, specifically that you collect as a rubric. I wanted to show you one last example of how you can use it as a quiz. So this is a short assessment that I made for my students for the short story, The Dinner Party. So the first thing I asked for was the first and last name. I asked for the student ID because I do things with that. But I asked for the class period, middle school. And then I had my multiple choice questions, 10 of them. Now, it's not going to work because I'm projecting and the resolution changes, but it's really handy sometimes. You can pull one over to the side here, pull the passage over to the side, and you really have, again, the projection makes it a little bit tricky. But you can really have a very, the projection again. So they can be reading the passage and actually have the questions over here alongside it. And when they submit those, those answers go into a spreadsheet. Now, one thing that you might assume is that if they submit the answers into the spreadsheet, they get a grade for it. But it doesn't know how to grade responses, right? You just get a bunch of responses, right? So there's actually an app within Google Docs, really easy to install. It's called Flubaroo. Strange name, but if you fill out the form yourself, it will basically snag your answers, and it will basically check all of the students' responses against your answers. It'll give you this nice formatted additional sheet with all of the scores, kind of like Beeper or Horizon. So you can use it as a quiz that way.
What did you say the name of that?
It's called Flubaroo, and let me grab it real quick. Okay, before I grab it, I'd like to go back with you guys to our form that we are constructing. Okay, and do you guys have 1 or 2 questions in there so far? Okay, so let's I'm going to save what I have here. Let's see. Okay, it says all changes saved in Drive. Okay. So I wanted you to show you how you can then view the responses. So if you click on responses, which is one of the 2 tabs at the top there, next to questions, it'll take you to a place where you can see in real time the responses as they come in. So if there are words, you'll see the words, all the different words that kids chose, all the different narratives. If they're multiple choice, you'll see probably the the bar graph or whatever here. But what you can also do is you can also set a spreadsheet to hold those responses as well. So over here, I'm going to click on Create Spreadsheet. And by default, it creates a new spreadsheet with the title of your form and then in parentheses responses, which differentiates it from the form itself. So I can click Create. Okay. And now it's opened a new sheet that has been created with the column headings as timestamp, name of your child, and I just had my ready reader questions up here. So the timestamp is cool because it will stamp all of the responses with the time they came in. So that's good for accountability and to figure things out after the fact. And then the responses are going to be in columns. Now, the name is going to be here, so I can check going down different students and see what the responses were very, very easily. And the one thing if you've used Excel or Google Sheets is that if you have like a narrative response, if you have a narrative response like this, okay? When they submit that narrative response, it will end up looking like this. So you see how it's elongated that row? If you do have narrative responses, it kind of pays to make that column that contains the narrative response pretty wide. And then you kind of lose that, that effect. So I'm going to go back to the form for a second. And you have your spreadsheet. You have a couple of questions. And the question is, how do you get it to the students, right? Like, how do you get it? And a great way would be through Classroom, because they already know how to do that. It's really quick to get there. Just put a link to it in there. So you can add that as a Google document straight from the assignment. Very easy. Another way is to do a QR code, which some people do, so kids can scan the device. And we have a couple of classrooms that have that capability. But another thing is a shortened URL, which is like goo.gl, the Google version of it. And it basically takes a very long web address and shortens it to something that students can type. Because if you want to see like what the actual students will be receiving, you can always click on the I button up here, which says preview. Okay, if you click on that, it will show you the user side of it instead of the editing side. And you can always go back to the editing side using this pencil, which is the typical editing icon for Google. So this is what my form is going to look like to the user currently. Now you'll notice at the top in the web address, it's like really, really long with lots of random letters, numbers that give it an identifier. At the end, you can tell that it's the user side because it says view form at the very end of it. But that's why it pays to like just plug it into Classroom, make it very, very simple. Or to use a URL shortener to make that web address really short. So, but Classroom really is the best way to do that. All right. The last thing is the color palette up here. The color palette allows you to put an image in your background if you want, or just to change the colors. And actually, there are a couple more things on the right here. So actually, that's not what I want. I think the last thing that I wanted to show was that you can add pictures. You can add YouTube, like you saw that Kevin did. Okay, so you could add a picture and then below that a question. So you might ask them like, what do you think this picture means? Get a narrative response from them, something like that. And you can also create here new sections. When you create a new section, then let's say that the section was in Kevin's example, it was, what was it? Fiction, okay, as opposed to nonfiction. So if I have a section called fiction, hold on. Okay, well, I kind of messed up there, but what I'm trying to do here is to show, actually I can do it up here. I create another question up here. If I create a multiple choice question, fiction or nonfiction, and I give several options, fiction or what I can do down here using this, the triple dots here, which show like settings, I can say go to section based on answer, and that's what Kevin was doing with a couple of his forms. So by default, when I choose that, all of these responses make the user go to the next section, which is going to be fiction. Okay, but I might have a section after that called nonfiction, and I can choose here that fiction will send me to section 2 for fiction, and then the nonfiction one could send me to section 3, which I created for nonfiction. And that's how he creates this branched forms that's based on the user input, or the same way that you would create like a choose your own adventure story. So that's kind of fairly exhausting of the, the form functionality. There's actually a lot more than there used to be. What questions do you have, or what uses do you see that you might be interested in employing it?
Well, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
If you were to set up like a grade book, would you use a sheet or would you use a form?
A grade book.
Like, like for report card usage.
Mhm.
'Cause I use Excel right now. I'm exploring the options
Okay.
for my own purposes.
Well, you would use a sheet
Actually,
because sheet is equivalent to Excel.
And would, I'm so sorry, the information, I did something online, would that be inputted in there, or would I have to look at the set data separately and input it out in the sheet?
Now, so the form is like a convenient way for you to interact with the sheet. So if you have like a specific way in which you enter data into the sheet, then you could use the form as sort of like that front end where you have several things that you need to put in. You put them in for the kid, and then they go in. But I'm thinking for that case, you're probably just going to want to manage the backend spreadsheet
Okay,
just by itself, I'd imagine.
Then we form to get them in the spreadsheet. Unless
right,
there's a way for the form to dump into.
yeah, I
like
wasn't sure.
The way for multiple forms to dump into the same spreadsheet, like different columns or different rows.
It is possible. It's advanced. It's possible, but it's advanced.
So what you're saying is, I would just have to do it myself,
Um,
like that part of inputting it into a separate sheet.
like if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you can go down the rabbit hole, or you can stay with
I'm afraid I won't come back up.
the simple. I mean,
Mhm.
I think most people just use the spreadsheet that way.
Okay, great. And now
The one thing that's kind of cool about I forgot what I was going to do. Okay, so now that you had your spreadsheet, I was actually going to show you that grading thing, okay, because that might be useful. So, can you click on that spreadsheet? You still should have it in your tab somewhere. To be honest, like I used this a lot up to about a year and a half ago, and things changed, so hopefully it hasn't changed too much. But if you go to add-ons, do you see add-ons on yours? Because sometimes we have different versions. Okay, add-ons, and go down to where it says Get Add-ons. Add-ons are like extensions, and I think you'll see that the first one there is Flubaroo. Do you see that? Shows you how popular it is, right? Grading, automatic grading for teachers. I mean, this is the most popular thing in like in a big, huge box of extensions. Okay, so you can click, I think, Add or whatever it happens to be on Flubaroo. And I'm not going to actually teach you Flubaroo today. Fortunately, the guy who made it made a great video that walks you through it. And I think it's probably within the extension itself that has a link to it. But I'm happy to also show you, just to take you over time.
This sheet is asking for permissions.
Ah,
to
okay.
do a lot of things.
Yes. Okay, let's read off what it is asking permission for.
So if we would like to know who you are,
Mhm.
your email address,
Mhm.
you can manage your spreadsheets,
Mhm.
you can manage your files in
Mhm.
Google Drive.
Yep.
You can manage your documents,
Mhm.
you can manage the data associated with the application.
Mhm.
Allow this application to run when you're not present.
Mhm.
Send emails as you.
Mhm.
Connect to external service.
Yep.
And publish this application as a web app web service that can share your data.
So actually, I mean, it's really a question of what you trust. And I trust Flubaroo. I trust basically all the scripts made by a guy named Andrew Stillman, which are basically the bulk of the education scripts or extensions that are out there, like Doctopus and stuff like that. And those are the only ones that I trust. I've researched them. I know about them. I know lots of people who use them, and they're kind of fairly security-minded people. The guy who created Flubaroo was a Google engineer who made it on his 20% time. I mean, it's a case of picking things that you trust, and not, I mean, because some of those things, you know, you wouldn't necessarily want any app to have access to. But even
the challenge is if what we want is this app to be able to manipulate that data to do what we want it to do, we have to give permission to do it.
yes, that's right. So Flubaroo has been used by a huge number of teachers in Fairfax for 5 years probably.
What were the other add-ons you said are?
Okay, so you probably see Doctopus there. I'm not sure. Doctopus is amazing. It kind of became a little bit less relevant when Classroom came out because Doctopus was this big, like, I mean, it's an octopus that basically manages your file that like is really complicated, but it creates this organizational structure. You don't need to do that anymore because you got Classroom. And Classroom does it all for you. It does it transparently. It looks really nice. Doctopus has become a little bit more user-friendly, but I mean, Classroom really does most of what it used to do. And the other ones, I mean, the other ones are more like administrative, so not so much for classroom teachers. Flubaroo is the most useful for classroom teachers. So it's pretty simple. Oh, so there are some things like I think it's GMath that allow you to create graphing and stuff in your forms and sheets. And actually, I have used that one before, and it's pretty cool because on the side of your form, I think it creates this bar where you can actually like plug in variables and create like slopes and stuff like that, and it'll actually graph it for you. I mean, it's really complex, but then that graph actually becomes your answer and it gets plugged into the spreadsheet as your answer. But it basically allows you to access a lot of math stuff in a way that you can't for the most part through Google Docs. But so that's an extension for that. If I knew a little bit more about math, I'm sure I'd be more excited about it, but it's not my specialty. Yep. So Flubaroo is maybe not for counselors.
I don't admit that to other people out there.
See, everyone looks at each one's things.
And then I get frustrated when I don't have her fun.
All right.
Anything else that you were going to go over?
How about one more thing? Okay, so real quickly, if you go to the gear for settings, that's where you can choose whether it's anyone in Fairfax County Public Schools or just plain anyone. So if you choose anyone, you can send the link out to anyone in the world and they'll be able to collect information. But if you choose the second one, it's going to block them unless they can log in with SCS Google Apps. That's the most useful stuff, I think. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Next week is probably going to be about sites, I think. Tara Murphy may be here to talk a little bit about what she's doing. If I can snag Kristen, I will, but I'm not sure if I can because she made something really cool with sites.